Hi there. This is Rightly Dividing. Read right, believe right. And here we use simple Bible interpretation principles to take on verses that we believe are, often misunderstood or are just purely difficult. And we make them simpler to understand because we believe every believer can understand the Bible. Every believer can understand the Bible. You can understand the Bible. And it just takes a few principles. And so I'm going to show you those principles briefly. The first thing you want to note is you want to read the pretext and the posttext. And the reason for this is because you always want to put what is being said in context. You don't want to be saying something that's not intended in that passage. Secondly, you want to let Scripture interpret Scripture. And that's really simple. That's just saying the Scriptures alone can do the job of interpreting itself. Don't bring in your preconceived notions. And finally, it helps to use multiple translations because some translations can be difficult to understand. And we're going to see an example of this kind of situation in the passage we're going to be looking at today. And we're looking at Proverbs chapter 23 verse 7. Very popular, right? For as he thinks in his heart, so is he. Some people even say, for as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. But the King James just says, for as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. But what does that mean? Does it mean the way a person thinks is the way he is? Does it mean something else? Well, we're going to find out using these three principles. And hopefully you learn something from this. So the first thing we want to do is what? Read the pretext and the posttext. So let's do that. We read the pretext. It's quite long, but I'm going to read from verse 6. It says, Eat thou not the bread of him that hath an evil eye. The bread of him that hath an evil eye. What does that mean? Neither desire thou his dainty meat. So he's saying someone who is stingy or very tight-fisted. Don't eat his food. Don't desire his beautiful meals, And then it's so funny that the next verse says, for as he thinks in his heart, so is he. What does that mean? That's weird. And then there's a colon. There's something very important about this. We're gonna see why it's there. And then he explains that statement. He says, eat and drink, saith he to thee. But his heart, okay? Remember he said heart earlier? Now he's saying heart again. So he's explaining what this first statement, for as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. He's explaining it so simply. He's saying this guy is going to say eat and drink, but his heart is not with thee. He doesn't mean it. And then the next verse says, the morsel which thou hast eaten, the one you've eaten, shalt thou vomit up. Well, like throw up, and lose thy sweet words. Okay, I'll be very honest with you. King James can be very difficult to understand sometimes, and so you want to follow those principles. And right now you're thinking, what principles would work? Well, in this case, we want to use another translation, right? And I'm going to use ESV for the sake of this verse because it really simplifies things a lot. And what you notice is that for as he thinks in his heart, so is he, does not exist. It's not there at all. So let's read the context and see if we get what's going on. It starts from verse 6. He says, do not eat the bread of a man who is stingy. Do not desire his delicacies. Okay, we saw that. That's clear, right? So don't eat the bread, and that means food, of a man who is stingy. And do not desire his delicacies, for he's like one who is inwardly calculating. So he's inwardly calculating. Does that ring a bell? He thinks in his heart. Wow. Okay, let's see if that's true. Because remember in King James, this was what came before. Eat and drink, and that's what we're seeing here. So for he is one, he's like one who is inwardly calculating. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. So same point is being made. He's saying, come and eat, come and drink, but he's stingy. So the writer of this proverb is saying, don't eat his food. He's stingy. He doesn't really mean it when he says, come and eat and drink. And then he goes ahead to say, you will vomit up the morsel that you have eaten and waste your pleasant words. That's important, but what can we take out of this? First of all, we realize that the verbiage of the King James is quite misleading. I mean, we always want to make sure we're in context, right? Let scripture interpret scripture. Let's read the pretext and the post-text. And what we're definitely seeing here, the context was a stingy man who had food and he just wanted to have the food to himself, but he came around here and said the opposite. Come and eat, which he didn't mean. And the writer of Proverbs is saying, don't eat his food. He doesn't really mean it. While you're eating, he is counting the cost, like, this guy is eating my food, he's gonna take all the food I have. That's what the man is thinking in his heart, and that's the context. So I hope that helps you understand it. Just to reiterate my point, it's not saying as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. It's actually just saying he thinks about his food in his heart. He's holding on to it. And so when he says, come and eat, he doesn't really mean it. I hope that helps clarify the scripture. And until next time, I'll see you later.